Let's go ahead and get started with backwards course design. The main idea behind backwards course design is that you're going to start with the end in mind. And what I mean by the end is what you want students to walk away from the course with. In fact, what you want all of your students in your course to walk away with. That's where you're going to start. What kind of knowledge, skill, disposition, whatever your goal is, what is it that you want all of your students to take away from this course? So to design the course around that, what you do is you think about what are the kinds of activities that I can do in the course that can help them towards that goal. Okay, and then the final part of it is how can I assess that students have met that course objective? How can students demonstrate through assessment that they have met that course objective that I laid out at the start? So the point of backwards course design is, again, start with your course goals and then design the rest of the course based on those goals so it all works together. So like I said, you're designing with your learning outcome in mind. So this obviously, it gives you a starting place, which is really nice. If you're like looking at a blank Word document that is going to become your syllabus, it tells you, okay, here's where you start. Start by writing out what your goals are for all students in your course, and then start thinking about how to construct the course from there. Besides that, though, I think it also is really useful because it gives you an answer to the student who might ask, why are we doing such and such activity? So if you've ever been in a course and it sort of feels like a train wreck and you're thinking to yourself, like, why are we doing this? What purpose does this activity serve? If the course is designed with backwards course design, you always have an answer to that. So if one of your students asks, why are we doing this activity? You can always say, because it's for this learning goal, right? You've designed the course in such a way that all of the activities are for a learning goal. And so to the student who asks why we're doing this, you can respond with a really compelling answer. Okay, and then the second part of why we're starting with the outcomes is to make sure that our course is aligned. So let me say a bit more about that. This figure is from a really useful guide that LD Fink wrote called The Self-Directed Guide to Designing Courses for Significant Learning. It's on our Canvas page. I would really recommend it if you're thinking about how to structure and design the course, which you are obviously if you're in this workshop, but if you want some further resources, it's there for you. Okay, so what does it mean to have an aligned course? Basically, all of the components of the course work together. So your learning goals, your activities, and your feedback and assessment make sense when you think about them together. Let me give you an example of something that's not aligned, and you'll see what I mean. So suppose you want students to write a paper by the end of the course. That's the learning goal, is that students be able to write a complete argumentative paper. But in class, all they do is listen to you lecture. So you're just lecturing at them about some course content. Now, the lecture does not help them towards that learning goal, right? So you might think, well, it's providing them some foundational knowledge, but it's really not giving them the skills that they need in order to write the paper, right? And so that's what's indicated by those two parallel breaks in that line, is that these don't match. Furthermore, suppose that all they've done so far in the course is received feedback on some short answer questions on exams, or even worse, suppose they've only taken scanned phone exams on the course. That means that the activities that they've done, which is to listen to you lecture, did not prepare them for the exam, hence the slashes, and it also doesn't help them towards writing that paper in the end. So this is just like a train wreck of a course that is totally misaligned. And so students will produce papers that instructors will deem as not very good by the end, but it's not their fault. They weren't trained to do this. They didn't practice it, and they haven't gotten feedback on it so far, right? And so this is really like a misaligned course. Okay, so suppose I did want to put it in alignment and use backwards course design. How would I do that? Again, I'd start with my learning goal is I want students to write a paper. Okay, if I want students to write a paper by the end of the course, what are the teaching and learning activities I need to do in the course? I have to give them opportunities to actually write, to express their voice, to have practice with synthesizing ideas, to have practice summarizing concepts. that kind of thing, right? So that'll help me get alignment between my learning goal and the activities. What should I do in terms of assessment? Well, one idea might be to ask students to submit a thesis statement and give them feedback on it. You could do that to help sort of scaffold a little bit more of their working on the paper. You can also ask them to submit an outline and give them feedback on that. The main idea is just that all of these parts of the course work together towards the learning goal. And that's what it means to have alignment in a backwards designed course. Okay, so far so good. What we've been talking about so far, though, is alignment between all these components. But let's now dive deeper into what makes for a really good student learning outcome itself. How do you decide and write out these learning goals? Okay, so let me give you some example student learning outcomes from some courses that I've taught and some courses that Michelle has taught. So here's a sample student learning outcome from a history course I've taught. Students will be able to critically reflect on the societal and moral values that underlie both historical and contemporary institutionalized scientific knowledge. Okay, so what do you notice about this student learning outcome? Feel free to pause the video at any point and think a bit more about the questions that I'm posing. So I hope you notice that it starts with students will be able to, which indicates that it's student-centered. You're thinking about what it is that you want students to get at the end of it. Then it has this verb, critically reflect, and then it has on blah, blah, blah. So that's the basic structure of the student learning outcome, is we start with students will be able to, some kind of verb, and then whatever else you need. So let me give you another example that has a little bit more detail. This one's from a logic course I taught. Students will be able to, again, evaluate a different verb, the deductive validity of arguments in sentential logic by using a Fitch-style natural deduction system. So not only is this one student-centered, it's also measurable because I've given the by using blah, blah, blah. That part isn't totally essential for your SLO at the course level, and that's because they could be demonstrating their knowledge through a lot of different means. So it wouldn't make sense to specify like they're going to be showing me this by X if they're doing it throughout the course, but you can include it if you like. Okay, so here's one from a political science course Michelle taught. Students will be able to identify aesthetic categories of politics that have become a tool for engagement, both online and offline. Again, students will be able to identify is the verb that she's using there. Okay, and let's go a little bit meta. So this one's for our own course design certification program. By the end of this program, participants will be able to create a syllabus by synthesizing SLO's assessments and activities. So it's obviously learner-centered, it's concrete and measurable because you are going to produce something at the end of it. Okay, so we have a working template. What makes for an effective SLO? Here's the template. By the end of the course, students will be able to do something, and you can also include by completing something. And that's the general template we work with. Once you have an example one written or some written that you want to use in your course, you can check, is it learner-centered? Is it concrete? Is it observable? And is it measurable? So you want it to be learner-centered, obviously, because you want it to center the student. You want it to be concrete and specific, like what is it that they're going to be doing? You want it to be observable in order to assess it, and you want it to be measurable as well in order to assess it and assess progress towards it. Okay, so with that in mind, I want to give you some examples of verbs, and people tend to use Bloom's taxonomy for filling in that verb slot. So Bloom's taxonomy, if you don't already know, at the very bottom layer, it has what are called like just factual, what is called factual information. So just things that students will remember. The next level up is understand. So this is like students will be able to explain concepts or ideas is how you would format it. You keep going up until the very peak is create. So if students are producing new original work, that's considered the highest level of knowledge. And so what you can do is take one of these verbs that's in Bloom's taxonomy and stick it into your template SLO. Which one you use is up to you. It depends on what your course goals are. So if you have upper division students, you want them to be creating a bunch of stuff, you can use more of the higher level ones. If you have lower division students and you want to really restrict it to knowledge, like factual knowledge, you can have some of the lower level Bloom's verbs. But don't be afraid to switch them up and make sure that you have like a diversity of different levels being hit in the course generally. Okay, so let me give you an example of how this looks on a syllabus. If you've ever looked for the SLOs on a syllabus, you'll see them sort of listed. There tend to be like about 3 to 6-ish of them. And so here's what it looks like on my syllabus. Here's another one from technology and education course. And then here's another one from a logic course. So these are just to give you an example of how you might format it on your own syllabus. Now, before I move on, I just want to note that SLOs are not limited to just content knowledge. Again, you don't have to stop at that foundational knowledge. You can include application of skills and integration of ideas amongst one another. But even that is only half of the circle. So again, the circle comes from the LD Think Guide. So if you want more information, look there. But what he puts in the other half of the circle are also really important skills. So it includes learning how to learn, or metacognition. So you could have goals that students become better learners, and that could be part of your course goals. Is to teach them how to become better learners for their own needs. You could want them to develop new interests or values in something. That would be under the caring dimension. You could also have like a human dimension goal, learning about themselves or other people. And that could be a student learning outcome for your course. So you could have really personal learning outcomes for students as well. And moreover, these need not be explicit. Like, you don't have to write it out that students do this on the syllabus itself. You might include it in the course description. You might include it in a section called like how to succeed in this course, or you might just have it implicit. That's totally fine too. But I just wanted to flag this to give you some idea of like, what are some of the other dimensions of learning that we might want students to go through in our courses. Okay, so I just mentioned course descriptions, which is our next topic. So how do you craft a course description? Like the course itself, I'm going to argue that you can craft your course description from your student learning outcomes as well. So let me give you some general guidance, and then we'll look at some examples. So I'd say aim for it to be short, like 100 words, maybe 125 max, but you really want it to be short so that students will actually read it. I think starting with some kind of sentence that grabs student attention about the course would be really effective. Why might a student be interested in this course? How do you draw them in? Then I talk about like the big picture skills or knowledge the course focuses on. So this is like one step up from your SLOs. Think what unifies your SLOs and sort of put that in the course description. And then finally, give students a sense of you and of the course. What kind of approach will you take in the course? Will it be heavy on active learning? Will it be heavy on group work, et cetera, et cetera? So what can a student who enrolls in your course expect? Okay, so that's my general advice. Let's look at some examples. So this example comes from a writing course taught at UCI in 2021 called Argument and Research. So remember what I said about getting students excited? Let's read the first paragraph to see if it draws you in. Writing 39Z, Argument and Research, is the second of UCI's 2 required writing courses that together fulfill the lower division writing requirement. Like the other one, this one focuses on critical reading and rhetoric and extends beyond it, teaching you strategies for identifying, understanding, and using various genres, and offering instruction in information literacy and research techniques. Great information. I'm not sure that the requirements fulfilled by this course need to be the first sentence. If a student's looking at this syllabus, they already know or have an idea of what kind of requirement it fulfills. So I would put that lower down, but personal preference. Okay, so the second paragraph, with its focus on social justice advocacy, the 39C curriculum motivates analysis of current pressing societal issues. I actually think this paragraph would be really effective to get students excited about the course. So I would suggest putting that first. Skipping a bit, the last paragraph gives the approach of the instructor to the course. The teacher will not tell you what to think, but they'll teach you how to communicate, blah, blah, blah. So this is the sort of approach to the course that I was mentioning, like what is it that you want to do with this course? Or what approach does the course take? Okay. Let's look at another example. This one's from an educational technology course. I think this one does a really good job of grabbing student attention from the start. And also note the pronouns that it's using here. Welcome to the world of educational technology. In this course, we'll study several important attempts to introduce technology to education from various perspectives. We'll discuss the history of ed tech and try to evaluate why many innovative techniques have not had a lasting impact. We'll talk about the theoretical foundations, blah, 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 culminates in a final project where you must either design or integrate your own technology. That's super catchy to students, I think, besides the welcome. The whole thing, I think, is really catchy to students. And also note that it's using this we pronouns. We're going to do this, we're going to blah, 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 and then in the end, you're going to design your own project. So it gives the course trajectory as well. In the second paragraph, in the overview, it sets this inclusive and welcoming atmosphere by talking about the students' well-being. Partly, I think this is obviously because it's in spring 2022, but you might also include this kind of sentence, maybe just one sentence or two about setting an inclusive and welcoming atmosphere for the course. Okay, so I'll round out my discussion there of the of course descriptions and turn it over to Michelle, who's going to talk about student diversity.
Thanks, Helen. So yes, now I would like to address the very important topic of student diversity. Okay, so here are some numbers for our most recent year, 2021. As you can see, UCI is clocking in with a majority non-white population, only 11% of students being white, although abysmal with a 3% Black student population. We are a federally designated Hispanic serving institution, or HSI, with 26% of our students being Hispanic and or Latinx. We've got a whopping 39% of students being Asian and a much less whopping 0.2% of students being American Indian. 19% of our students are international and 1.5% are unknowns. Well, how does this square with other University of California campuses? We're actually ahead of the curve. For context, Pell Grants are grants awarded by the U.S. Department of Education to help eligible low-income students pay for college costs, including tuition, fees, room and board, and other educational expenses. As you can see, all of the UCs combined have 34% of undergraduates being Pell Grant recipients and 39% of undergraduates being first generation, meaning that they are the first in their families to attend college. However, here at ECI, we are above average with 38% of our undergraduates being Pell Grant recipients and a big whopping 47% being first generation. And now, what does this mean for us as we approach student diversity in the classroom? One approach is the Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. This approach takes the focus away from the narrow accommodation of specific disabilities or identities and more on a holistic approach, which boosts everyone's learning. To get more into the nitty-gritty, UDL encourages us to provide multiple means of representation, meaning that all students have different ways they can engage with the material. For example, you can have both in-person lectures or video lectures with captions for those who might struggle with limited hearing, or for those with attention deficits. It also encourages multiple means of action and expression, such that all students have different ways of expressing their learning of course materials. For example, if a student has difficulty raising their hand in class and participating in discussion verbally, you can have a different way for those students to participate, such as a writing assignment in lieu of verbal discussion. And finally, multiple means of engagement for all students to be continuously motivated in the classroom. For example, using videos instead of just simply sticking to textbooks for course materials. To clarify those examples, here's one that's more in depth. Suppose you learn that you have a hearing impaired student in your class. You can ask yourself the following questions. Do you provide that student with transcripts and/or write captions for the audio materials that you use in class? Or have you already provided transcripts and/or captions on the audio materials you use in class? Be sure to do so if you haven't already. Some other examples pertain to course flexibility. You can give grace periods so you don't have to make one-off exceptions to deadlines, or you can even give multiple options for creative assignments that students can choose amongst. Other examples are uploading any asynchronous videos on YouTube so that they'll be automatically captioned. And finally, check in about students' prior knowledge and ask for feedback throughout the course. Some general tips for the course policy section of your syllabus. First of all, avoid making strict attendance policies, since those policies disadvantage students with medical needs as well as students facing personal emergencies. You never know what a student can be going through. And letting your students know ahead of time that you're open and empathetic to absences will make them feel more welcome in the classroom. Next, make due dates flexible over a short period of time. For example, you can open a Canvas assignment on Monday and keep it open until Thursday. This allows students to plan ahead or deal with unforeseen circumstances without having to miss a deadline. Next, be extra clear about due dates, penalties for academic dishonesty, and other course policies. Eliminating ambiguity helps reduce anxiety in students. Avoid banning laptops. Students may have a need for a computer in order to learn for whatever reason it might be, and you should demonstrate a willingness to be open and amenable to diverse learning styles. Next, share strategies for students to be successful in your course. For example, if you have a writing-heavy course, perhaps provide some tips or an outline of what you're looking for in those essays. You can share links and information about campus resources, such as the Center for Excellence in Writing and Communication, Student Health Center, Counseling Center, and more. Be sure, especially in a discussion-based course, to encourage respectful communication in an effort to promote inclusivity and reduce polarization and marginalization in the classroom. Finally, write your own inclusive statement and share with your students. So what was that last bit? Write a what? An inclusivity statement. What is that? Well, basically, it's a statement for your syllabus to clarify, concretize, and share your values regarding diversity, education, and inclusion in your discipline and in your classroom. These are optional but highly encouraged. In any case, if you decide to include it, it should communicate the commitments that you will make related to equity and inclusion, the commitments you expect your students to make, how you will collect feedback on inclusion, and the ways you'll respond to oppressive comments or actions in your classroom. The statement can signal to students how you as an instructor commits to create the class culture and to conduct the course in inclusive ways. You can highlight your commitments not only at the outset of a course, but at one or more instances throughout the academic term, including a statement on how you'll commit to interrupt racism and other forms of oppression will be useful to return to if such incidents occur in the classroom. Restating personal and professional support for inclusion and diversity is also timely whenever incidents in class, on campus, or elsewhere might undermine students' sense of inclusion and belonging. Since every instructor is different, it's recommended that you take the time to think about the role of diversity, equity, and inclusion in your teaching prior to writing a statement for your syllabus that reflects your unique thoughts, experiences, and values. Though a syllabus statement tends to only be about a paragraph long, it should reflect deep and thorough thinking by you. Not only that, this helps you design your course. How's that? Well, given that you want to be consistent the entire time with what you've laid out in the syllabus, it helps you to flesh out things like your course policies, and it might even shape how your lessons will play out. One really important thing that you should do in your inclusivity statement is to include some campus resources. There are different types like academic, community, and emotional and mental well-being support. Here's a list of some that you can include in your syllabus. But if you need something that's not listed on the last slide, or if you just need something really specific, I highly recommend checking out UCI's Campus Assist list. It's linked here on the slide. The Campus Assist list is an online collection of campus and community resources for low-cost community service, including basic needs, medical, and local mental health and counseling providers. You can just select an initial filter based on either the type of resource, population, or location. And then on the following results page, you can use the menu to narrow down your search even further. I highly recommend that everyone just have this at their disposal.